So this is part 2 of the video series about perfect weight and height. And right now I just want to focus on the part of height.
There is a certain leverage that makes a boat go fast. And everything beyond that is basically a waste of time and energy. Then I started Biorower in 2000, and with Biorower, for the first time, I got involved with a lot of biomechanics. The thing was, if we wanted to make that Biorower the perfect rowing machine, we had to understand precisely, not just a bit, not just roughly. We had to get into the facts. What is it that makes a boat go fast? And this is how I got involved in this biomechanic thing and everything. So I had to have substantial knowledge. With this, we found out that there is a certain leverage that makes a boat go fast. And everything beyond that is basically a waste of time and energy. If you have less than that, it's also too short. And I think also Valery Kleshnev, the Russian scientist in the UK, very cool guy, he also said the same thing. There are certain angles and degrees you need that make sense, and if you reach them, that's fine, that's good. What we find out, I think Kleshnev backs it up too, at the catch in a sculling boat, you should have something around 70 degrees. So 70 degrees means, okay, so you see, this is the pin, this is also the pin, so this is something we would call 0. Okay, so whenever the oars are perpendicular, this would be 0. Everything before that, in terms of catching, would be negative, this would be positive. So if the oar is right here, up to 70 degrees, it makes sense. If you go any further, what happens? The blade actually has almost no chance to lock in the water because the geometry is not good. If you apply force in a linear way, it won't work for the body too, because you have to go inwards with the hands and therefore outwards with the blade. The farther you go, you're almost parallel to the boat. So what you're going to do is just going to push outwards. It's not going to make the boat fast. And these 70 degrees, you can reach them with 165 body size. So it's a matter of how you adjust the boat.
A lot of people think that you need to be extra tall to row, and that's not true. The best example for me was last year's World Championships in Sarasota in Florida, especially the women's single scull. If you were looking at the women's single scull, you saw 3 different athletes, 3 different heights. We had the winner, roughly 170 centimeters tall. Then we had the second placed, she was 190 some, and then the third placed 180. I know the lanes again were not fair and everything, but still you see a lot of height difference there. And so if it were that important, why is it that the smallest girl wins? That's just not logical. The thing is, it's a myth. I actually think, yeah, you can be too small, of course, if you're, I don't know, something like 150. That might be something of a challenge, so to exaggerate right there. But I think if you're around 170, plus minus something, or if you're around 190, it does make a difference. You just have to row differently. And I actually did a video on this. I'm trying to link it somewhere here or there, and so you can have a look. That race is just staggering. It was awesome. If you're small, you have certain advantages. You can use more body dynamics. Body dynamics, I mean that using that hip motion. If you swing back with your hip and you're very tall, you already have a lot of motion going on. And in order to understand that you can actually be too tall, you need to understand what the blade does in relation to the boat. So the overall conception of a blade in the water is that at the catch, the blade is actually pointing away from the water. So it's that way. It points away from the water, and then it gradually turns, or the boat goes past that blade that should sit somewhat still in the water, and then we are in the perpendicular position. This is when the hands are almost overlapping. When the hands are overlapping, this is probably the best possible angle to generate boat speed. And towards the finish, the blades are pointing towards the boat again. So At the catch and at the finish, so the extreme positions, this is where you can get more when you're tall. But the problem is that the extreme positions are not suitable to make you, any faster. If the blade points away from the boat at the catch anyway, so if you're taller, you just have it more pointing away from the boat. And if you apply any force there, it doesn't make you a lot faster. Then at the finish, when the blade is actually pointing towards the boat, because it's just the geometry, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be longer either, because what do you want to do? I mean, it's just having pointing more towards the boat? No. Where you need to be effective is around that zero position, where the blades are in a 90-degree angle towards the boat, and this is where you need to be efficient. And anybody can do that. I mean, probably with a body height of 160, why not? I mean, why should it be any different? Now, some people say, well, the levers are better when you're taller. So when you're 190, you just have an easier game to accelerate the boat. Because, of course, the longer the lever is, the less effort you have to spend. So the question is, what type of acceleration we're talking about? In a rowing stroke, the rowing stroke is not a static acceleration where it's just good to have long levers to move something that is sitting still. When you need the so-called long levers, which is around the perpendicular position, that zero position, you need to add quite a bit of body dynamics. And with body dynamics, I'm talking about leg to hip transition. So this is where the legs are pushing and you open up the hip. So if this is the trunk and these are the legs, and you push and hold, and towards the middle of the stroke, whoop, this is what you want to do. So, and everybody can do this. If you're too tall, what happens is that you have a very long lever, and as soon as you add a bit of body dynamics, what's going to happen is that it just becomes too long. It sounds weird, but it's actually true. A very tall person adding a lot of dynamics, a long lever will create a long motion that you actually don't want, because you don't want to get that blade too close to the boat. So if you're short, your lever is not that good, because you have to work more, but the boat has gained quite a bit of speed towards a perpendicular position anyway, so why should you worry about having to need long levers? What you actually want to do is create a lot of dynamics, and dynamics are better created with levers that will not result in a stroke that's too long. So is it a disadvantage to be tall? No. You just have to row your own style. Can tall and short people row together? Of course, why not? But what you have to do then, you would have to synchronize your force curves precisely. We do this quite a lot on the bi-rower. The bi-rower actually has something that's a live mode, so you can see your force curves left and right separately while you row. This is the gaming part of the rowing. There's also the question of how long is your trunk versus your legs? How long are your arms? How long can you reach out? Short arms, probably not an advantage, but not a huge disadvantage. Long arms, not bad. Can be too long, of course, too. But this is not, people worry so much about what their body looks like. I focus much more on how I influence the boat. You need to be good in technique anyway, no matter if you're tall or small.
And at the finish, around 40 degrees is the optimum. So 70 plus 40 makes 110 degrees. If you have more than 110 degrees, maybe 120, okay. But somewhere there's a limit. I mean, you can't have a 180 degree stroke. That's just nonsense. It doesn't make you any faster. And the 70 to 40 ratio is enough. Sometimes it's faster to have 68 at the catch and 35. It's not how long it is how you distribute your force. And this is also what we learned with the bi-rower. And as the bi-rower is set up like the boat, we have precisely the same measurement systems as you use them in the boat. Probably more precise because we are in a laboratory condition almost. So it is not important if you are 170, if you're 180 or 190. I think this is the range between 170, 165 to up to 2 meters, 2 meter 5 maybe. But everything above that and below that is probably going to be difficult. And then you have the arm length, and there's varieties, how long your trunk is, how long your legs are. To me, these variables just determine your rowing style, your individual rowing style. If you want to move a boat efficiently, you have to find your own way to move that well. And this is also what we learned with the bi rower. If you have force curves in front of you and angles in a live mode, it's basically an adaptation process as you go. So you see everything you do live, and of course you can adapt the way you row, because you say, okay, I have to move this way and that way, position myself that way to catch, to have that 70 degrees at the catch and 40 at the finish. And then you look at your force curves and say, okay, if you want to have that plateau during peak stroking, then okay, I need to move this in that way and combine it with the length. So just playing around makes you understand how your body works. Good. So considering body height and body weight, I think you don't need to be extra tall to get the minimum degrees you need. The greatest challenge for me is to break the barrier in the head. And I think a barrier in the head is much worse than being 5 centimeters too small or 10 kilos lighter than someone else. That's the real problem. The real problem is what you think your body height or your body weight means to you. The real problem is your barrier in your head. It is not your actual body height, and it's not your body weight.
Alright guys, to finish off that story about height and weight and preferences and what's good, what's not. To me, the most important thing is that you guys row well and you do it with passion, and that you forget all about, what you should be. Because when someone tells you you should be that, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is what you do with what you've got. That's what makes a world champion. There are lots of people who are 2 meters tall, but only a few of them are world champion. There are lots of people that are 180 tall, but only a few of them are world champions. It is what you make of it, not what you've got. There's a story I heard many years ago, and it's of course a fictional story, but it resembles to me what it's all about. There's the story goes like this. A lot of frogs gather for a competition. The challenge is to climb up a high brick wall tower, and whoever gets there first wins, of course. So what they do, a lot of frogs gather, and a lot of spectators are there, and so they start to climb. Halfway through, 3/4 of all the frogs have given up. Only a quarter is left. They climb and climb and climb. The weather gets really bad. It becomes cold, snowstorm, just ugly, muscles sore, everything hurts. All the frogs who've given up before now scream at the other frogs and say, okay, stop it, stop it, stop it. It's too dangerous, whatever, give up, it's not worth it, and a lot of things. Most frogs now actually give up because they listen. Only 2 are left, and there's only a few more meters to climb, but it's now, the progress is really slow because it's getting cold, muscles are sore, and just, life sucks up there. It's so hard. And now the frogs are screaming down there. All the spectators say, wow, stop it, it's too hard, too whatever. And one of the 2 frogs actually gives up, comes down. There's only one left, and he inches his way up, millimeter by millimeter. It's so slow to progress, but he does progress. He does make progress, but it's very slow. And everybody tells him, forget it, you will never make it with this pace. Just give up like all the others. Everybody has given up. You should give up too. And he still keeps on climbing. What's wrong with this frog? He keeps on climbing and climbing and climbing. Everybody says, come on, the weather is bad. You're not making any visible progress. It's like a millimeter every few seconds. What's that? And he just keeps on climbing. And eventually, unbelievably, this frog makes it. And then he comes back down, and all the guys who said, you won't make it, now say, oh, I always knew you were going to do it. You know that one? Yeah, I know that one too. And then they find out this frog is deaf. He did not hear them. He couldn't hear them. He couldn't hear when they were screaming he should stop. He just couldn't. And probably you should be like this deaf frog. If you are convinced of something, who gives a crap about how tall you are, you know, how heavy you should be? Just row. Just enjoy the sport and just go for it. To me, that's what rowing is all about. And in the end, if you want to win the race and if you want to get on the very top, it is your heart that's going to make the difference. It is your passion that's going to make the difference. Not if you're 1 centimeter taller or not. Guys, that's the moral of the entire story for me. I hope you have a very good day. If you have not subscribed to the channel already, do it now. It's a good time to do so. There's more content ahead. And for the rest, I wish you a very good day. It's getting dark outside now. And see you soon. Bye-bye.
Good evening, ladies and jerks, and these Mercedes at first. It seems the 80s the worst, release the peace and it hurt. Tell my mama through the drama, Farrakhan rolling. So beat the armor, karma crawling, but they keep on calling. They put the battery up in your back, these niggas funny. I change your names to the fucking Energizer Bunny. I be the man while you motherfuckers looking bummy. More like the clan, had these niggas always running from me. So what's the plan? Spitting aim, seeming lots to jock me. I'm in Japan, getting brains screaming Nagasaki. I'm like a Dr. Poppy, like a gynecologist. I'm in your chicks whiffing, digging the quick. So if I spit it like you spit it, couldn't feel no